Hi, my name is Richard Taylor, and I'm a sculptor. My studio is in River West here in Milwaukee, and I was fortunate to be chosen to create these sculptures as a monument to the former Milwaukee Road Railroad. And we're actually on the site, a site of many, many acres, where years ago there was a large group of buildings here where over 5,000 people worked for the Milwaukee Road Railroad, actually making their boxcars, their railroad cars, even their locomotives. So this site was a bustling location full of activity, fueling the railroad with their rail cars for many, many decades. The railroad was founded in 1847, and along its tenure it consumed numerous other railroads and eventually had over 11,000 miles of track from the west coast near Seattle, Washington, as far east as Indiana, and as far south as southern Illinois. It was interesting, some of the locomotives had to be both electric and diesel powered because when they reached the tracks in Montana, the railroad switched from diesel powered to electric powered. So I found out a lot of these interesting facts when I did research on the history of the railroad in the Milwaukee Public Library. There's a very nice archive in the library of railroad memorabilia, history, photographs. In fact, all the figures, all the silhouettes you see in these sculptures are literally taken from photographs of Milwaukee Road Railroad workers. And I've taken a little liberty with them. For instance, there was not a fellow on his knees hoisting a locomotive, but they show the hard work that the people were involved in who kept the railroad going. And again, everything from building the cars to maintaining the track to laying the track to driving the locomotives and taking the tickets. The sculptures are all abstractions on various elements of the railroad. This middle piece, for instance, it appears to have a large letter C, a backwards letter C. That's actually a reference to what was called the roundhouse, which was a round building, an almost round building, and sort of like a donut with a bite taken out of it. But this is where railroad track radiated from inside this circle. And this building was big enough to accommodate locomotives, where they would service the locomotives, and they had sort of a Lazy Susan affair in the middle where the locomotives could enter and exit. So the letter C refers to this very large building, the roundhouse, which was situated not far from where we are. Other references are a grain elevator on the last building, or the last sculpture, I should say. References to steam-powered locomotion in the cylinders that are stacked in the fourth sculpture. There's a water tower, which again the steam engines needed to replenish their water supply, the second sculpture. The first sculpture is just sort of an abstraction of a crate with the dates of the railroad on it. And you see the figures all have railroad track overlaying their silhouettes, and again that's just to emphasize the railroad that was in all of them. Their allegiance and their hard work and their dedication to the railroad. My dad actually worked on the Milwaukee Road Railroad when he was going to university at Marquette University one summer. He did heavy manual labor and actually enjoyed that job just for a summer while he was an engineering student. The railroad did a lot of metal casting, and the upper figure on the first sculpture is holding a circular shape with almost a spiral in it. That's a silhouette of a railroad wheel. So there was ample opportunity for me to find a lot of interesting design elements to make these sculptures. You'll also find one of the Milwaukee Road logos on the second sculpture. a logo from the Hiawatha train. Actually, two variations on that logo on the fourth and fifth sculptures. Reference to a railroad crossing on the fifth sculpture. So a lot of not so subtle references to the railroad. And for a number of reasons, I chose rusted steel. This is actually an architectural steel called Core 10 steel as the medium for the sculptures. If you walk through a railroad yard, you're very likely to see a lot of rusted steel in the tracks and in the undercarriages of the railroad cars. So I thought it was very appropriate in an aesthetic sense to use the rusted steel as the material for the sculptures. And beyond that, it's a very durable medium. It doesn't have to be repainted. Mother Nature keeps rusting it for us. So for all those reasons, it was an appropriate choice for the material. I thought a grouping of 5 sculptures would be interesting in this arc footprint here because it sort of mirrors the site. These curves and ellipses were here in concrete before we created these sculptures, and I thought it would be interesting to reflect that in the siting of the sculptures with this arc. I had a lot of help from people in the process, most notably Bob Peschel from Sigma Engineering and Melissa Cook from the DNR, both of whom have retired, but they were tireless champions in getting this project done, and great people to work with. So we'll have another sign here soon which will give a little more information about the railroad and the history of the railroad. There are a couple of markers or signs here at present that give some history of what happened here and photographs of the extensive railroad yards. There will also be some of the source photographs on the new marker, so you will be able to look at the marker and see the source I found in the public library for the various silhouettes that we have here.